Four riders up front inside 6 minutes, their advantage now. Hermetti of Androni at the back, chatting to his DS Gianni Savio, getting the instructions. No doubt they sound a little bit like, would you keep riding as hard as you can. And also in there, Pavel Brut of Katusha, Adam Hansen of Lotto Belisol, Popovic of Radio Shack. Peloton still being led by Euskaltel. They've got a few reinforcements. Colombia have come up to give them a bit of a hand. AG Tour also a little weather eye on the possibilities for Pozzo Vivo, and of course for Betancourt later on in the stage. At NY Velocity suggests that Adam Hansen is the Graham Obrey of feet, and that's a reference of course to the fact that he makes his own shoes. Well, they're amazing pieces of footwear actually, just show a minimalist approach. If they're as comfortable as he said, and they were certainly comfortable enough to deliver him to a stage success, then they may well have radically altered footwear design. Mark Cavendish has a little peek out. He's in that red jersey there. He's got the company, and they're lighting course on Carlos Betancourt just ahead of Cavendish there. Meanwhile, the overall race leader, Vincenzo Nibali, had the lead since last Saturday week. Stage 8, he took it at the time trial. Won so impressively by Alex Dowsett. Bradley Wiggins finished second on that occasion. Bradley Wiggins having long since departed this race. Turning his attention to the Tour de France, perhaps. Well, this Giro d'Italia still has to be completed. And a very arduous test for the riders. The Cima Coppi, Trecime di Lavaredo, the highest point of the Giro d'Italia coming today. It's been snowing almost relentlessly in the Dolomites, and at the top of that hill there's lots and lots of snow, but luckily enough it's clear enough in the valley, and it's great to see as well for the riders that they haven't had to face the rains that have blighted so much of this race. Highest point of the race was due to be the Stelvio, of course. Stelvio, which was part of yesterday's stage that had to be cancelled, and that was quite a bit higher. But still 2,300 metres for the riders to climb today. The point they have to climb to. And Nibali looking controlled. At Pod 1963 asks, do the teams talk to each other before a stage starts, letting them know what their plans are? Well, I guess there'd always be a bit of chat between the teams. They try not to let the cat out of the bag if it's of any tactical advantage. But sometimes if they might have shared tactical goals, they might have a bit of a conversation, Sean.
Well, some guys in different teams, they'd be very good buddies. Maybe they train together a lot, come from the same area. They might give a little bit of information to some of the other riders in rival teams, let's call them. But in general, they give out very, very little information. And from my experience in the past, and doing the commentary, you see there's races and talking to the riders, they do not disclose the information, the team tactics, because when you give it to one guy, well, he's going to give it to the other guys in the team as well, and then they have friends in another team, and by the time you get to the start line, or you get 50 kilometres into the stage, there's 25 riders know exactly what their tactic is going to be, their tactic for the day. So it's very rare, I think, that anybody in a team would disclose the tactic of the day of the team.
Scott McCollum wants to know, is Nibali riding the Tour? Well, it wasn't in his programme. It was all about Giro d'Italia. Looks like he's going to be successful with that. Still got to get through today's stage and tomorrow's stage, of course, so we won't put the mockers on him, but certainly he's looked so strong that it looks like he's ticking that particular box. But I think it's certainly something that he'll look at. And I mean, what is the next best option for Astana? I'm sure he'll be encouraged to think about the Tour de France. What do you think, Sean?
Well, I don't think they will change the programme around a lot. The objective for the beginning of the year was to do Torino Adriatic, for example. Then the Giro was always the big one, and now he's on the road to doing that. I would see it as being the Vuelta late in the year, World Championships, being in Italy on a route which is really difficult, so it will suit a rider like Nibali because there's a lot of climbing involved in it, and I would reckon that's the road they will go down. They will follow that programme to do the Giro and then get a bit of recovery time, start getting ready again for the Tour of France is always that bit more difficult. So I think after this Giro he will have a bit of downtime and then start preparing for more at the end of season.
Last man to do the double, of course, Marco Pantani back in 1998. Before that, Miguel Indurain. In the past, the likes of Eddy Merckx have done it as well. And these are scenes at the finish line, Trecime de Lavaredo, and visibility reduced once more as the snow comes down, but they got plenty of salt on those roads as well as the snow plows out to clear it, so they've kept the surface such that the riders won't have any difficulty with grip and traction working their way through the hairpins uphill. It's certainly steep enough that the corners are not going to be an issue. Traction could be a bit of an issue, I suppose, as they get out of the saddle, but unlikely to prevent them from racing to the finish today. So Pavel Brut is winding his way on as Christian Canese is gone up and down, collecting bottles, transferring them. That's well, he was back at the car for a while. Maybe he stayed back there and picked up. He had a lot of bottles on board there, didn't he? I wonder, was he going for the record? Dermot Fremantle says, looks like it will be snowmobile racing at the finish. Well, the conditions are definitely poor, and it's very cold. It's going to be cold for the riders, but at least they're going uphill, so obviously the wind chill won't be the same issue for them, and they'll be making massive efforts, so their engine will be singing on maximum revs, and that's going to keep them very hot indeed. So more of an issue, I think, for everyone standing around watching them.
I think the big issue will be for our pictures, because it looks like the fog is coming in, and that's going to be a problem, of course, for the heli shots. It's always real difficult when you get that low cloud, low fog, and we can see there it seems to be blowing in, but it's been like that for quite a while. It comes in for a while, then it blows off again, so it's changing all the time. But as you get further up, there's definitely more cloud up there. We can see here in the valley the riders are getting through real well, dry conditions, because if you had the wet conditions here it would be so cold again, the riders would be really suffering, but today they've got through. And when you get to the final mountain of the day, if it's 15 kilometres, if it's 25 kilometres, you're going uphill, so you're going to keep warm, and I don't think there'll be any problem. We can see there the road, the snow is not staying on the road at all, it's melting real quickly, so there's no problem for the riders to get up to the top. It's just that for everybody waiting around here, all the supporters, it's been a long cold day.
Mike Evans says Nibali will ride Vuelta, not the TDF. Oh, absolutely, that's his programme. I was just putting it out there as a suggestion to see who could he possibly think about holding form and going for it. What about Cadel Evans? Do you think this Giro d'Italia will have offered him the opportunity to gain the legs he needs to really challenge for Tour de France honours? Well,
I think his performance here has been real good, considering he hadn't planned to do the Giro in the beginning of season. It was pretty late decision, and the performance he's put in, it's a real good performance, and he can build on from here. Finishing the Giro, then get out, recover a bit and start your preparation of the Tour. It looks like that he is, close to be getting into top shape, something like he had when he won his Tour of France. And if there's room for improvement again, that is the question, and only the rider and the team know that. If you're capable of improving a bit from here, well, then he will be a Tour of France contender.
So Brute, Hansen, Popovic and Merckx through the intermediate sprint point, and it'll be interesting to see what happens amongst the bunch chasing behind. Those riders less concerned with the intermediate sprint honours, but I suspect we're going to see Mark Cavendish poking his nose out into the wind, coming close to that, and we hopefully will have that intermediate sprint amongst the peloton just after this short commercial break, just coming up now. It's the penultimate day of the Giro d'Italia, stage 20 from Silandro to Trecime de Lavaredo, 211 kilometres in total, and the riders are now within the last 52, so just about 30 odd miles of racing for the riders, but they're the 30 toughest miles of this stage by a long way. Mark Cavendish is edging his way towards the front, because while the four race leaders out front with a 5 minutes and 9 seconds advantage have mopped up the top four positions in the intermediate sprint point, Mark Cavendish has an excellent opportunity to add 2 points to his points total. Overall points leader, as denoted by the fact that he's wearing that red jersey, and he's surrounded by his teammates from the Amiga Pharma Quick-Step squad. Colombian rider and Vinny Fantini rider making their appearance there, thinking more about closing down the lead of the leaders out front. It's Morentes on the front, and Mark Cavendish just says politely, "We've just got a little bit of business to attend to here." Doesn't look as if he's going to be challenged by anyone else. The Amiga Pharma Quick-Step team mass around him, as Dobiaco, beautiful leg, forms the backdrop to this scene of minor importance in the grand history of cycling, but a little bit of business to be done. Look at that, that is absolutely jaw-dropping. It takes your breath away. Another thing that takes your breath away is spending all day in the break, and Pavel Brute has done that in the company of Ermetti, Hansen and Popovic. And spectators making their way to the finish, and Cavendish is challenged for that, and he wants to have a little bit of a conversation with the Vinny Fantini riders. And Mark Cavendish is left wondering exactly what was going on there. I think he wasn't expecting to be challenged. Makes a little bit of effort, suddenly realises that, well, he's actually got a little bit of a fight on, and leaned across, didn't lean too far, so I don't think there's going to be any complaint. And he's going to have to explain himself to each and every one of the Amiga Pharma Quick-Step team.
Yes, and we can see the teammate of Mark Cavendish there, CEO Trentin, having a discussion also, what's the reason for making the sprint there, because when you look at the classification that's up to play for, well, they're not really in it, and but again, having a go there in the sprint. And we could see Mark Cavendish a bit earlier on. He was calling his guys to the front, and I think he wanted them just to keep the pace a bit higher, and he almost got pipped there because the pace wasn't fast enough for him. And when a rider just decides to go in the final 20 metres of the sprint like that, you can get taken by surprise.
Here are the images at the finish line at Trecime de Lavaredo, and people are making their way up to the finish in various different ways, and I tell you, any way you get up that hill is a massive achievement, and that's one of the bigger achievements I think made today. The gap is coming down, the road surface becoming just that little bit patchier, and that indicates we're heading for the hills. These riders showing no signs of a lack of strength. The impetus is still coming. Popovic has been putting in some very impressive turns, so too Pavel Brut. Hermetti too is working his way. Adam Hansen's arm warmer is has fallen down a little bit, and that tells you all you need to know. It hasn't been that easy that they can adjust arm warmers and keep clothing just all neat and tidy and things like that, so they've really been slogging away out there. So Mark Cavendish gets those 2 points and adds those to his total. So he's now up to 115 points by my calculations. And that makes him 7 points ahead of Cadel Evans. Remember, 25 points on offer for the winner of the stage. 20 points for second, 16, 12 and so on, down to 15th position. Still Euskaltel slug away on the front now, aided by Colombia. Colombia's agenda more obvious, I think, Sean. They're probably thinking about placing a rider in there for stage honours.
Well, I'd say both of them are probably thinking the same situation. I'd be surprised if we don't see Samuel Sanchez really having a go here. You know, he has been coming in this final week. He's getting better all the time, and with what the team have been doing all day, if you're the man who was to do the final business on the end of the stage, well, then the pressure is going to be on, because the team are after, you know, putting in a huge effort here and controlling the breakaways. We can see just under the 5 minutes at the moment, with a little over 48 kilometres to go. This is going to be now the situation where it becomes real difficult for the four-man breakaway to stay out there. With this very difficult final, we have the final 20-25 kilometres are all very difficult, and the Colombia team as well, they have riders, you know, who are capable of doing something on a mountaintop finish as always, and they're pushing on the pace as well, just to make sure that the breakaway will be taken down in the end. And the Colombia team, with a lot of young riders, they are very good climbers. They have been, you know, very aggressive in this race, but Euskaltel, it has to be all for Sammy Sanchez. And I suppose by, you know, the time trial, he was so close to getting a stage victory in that one. It looked like he could hold on, but Nibali put in such a strong performance, just took it from him at the very final moments, and they're going to try and, you know, rectify that today and get a stage victory for the Euskaltel team.
Robert Brescia at the back. His teammates have been working away up front. Saw him in a few breakaways early on in the race. Looked strong at that point, but he's 2.25 hours down on GC now, so it's that's been a tough few weeks for all the riders in here. Cormac O'Brien tells me, don't forget Stephen Roach won the Giro and the Tour in 1 year. I did remember that. Well, I didn't say it. And in the GC says, thanks Sean for jinxing the pictures at the finish. Well, I do hope we do have pictures at the finish. The conditions are terrible. They're good enough for racing, and the riders, once they get up there, they will ride to the finish. But it might be a little bit difficult for helicopters. We'll see how things go anyway. At Finny T is asking, can punters, the general public, buy road books for Grand Tours? It'd be great to have one for the 100th Tour de France. I don't know about that, but I do know somebody had a link online to a PDF of the Garibaldi, they call the road book of the Giro d'Italia, so it was possible to link to it online, all right. Although in fairness, so many of the stages were altered that probably wasn't as much a benefit as you think. Mark Cavendish has slotted back into the line, not too far back, just behind the riders that are setting the agenda. So he still has more work to do. The next intermediate sprint point comes just at the bottom of the Tre Croci. 22.1 kilometers to go. So just over 24 kilometers between here and the for the leaders, between here and the next intermediate sprint point. And the bunch are about 2 further kilometers behind. And those 4 riders out front now within 5 minutes for the first time in a long time. The gap has come within 5 minutes. So now that little bit of extra impetus from Colombia and AG2R is really putting it up to the riders. And you can tell that things are getting a little bit colder because all the riders are starting to put on gloves and put on arm warmers. Jackets are going on. Up the front they're pushing away, but riders are taking any opportunity they can get. Cavendish looks good at the moment. It's interesting, he's sitting in front of his teammates and in 4th or 5th position. Snow melts and trickles off the hillsides as the riders head up to where only goats would go. Did any sense? Hermetti, Brute, Hansen and Popovic, as it has been since the very early stages of this stage. Plenty of Twitter love for Rafał Majka. We were talking about him earlier in the white jersey of leader of the Young Riders competition. Michele Scarponi is picked out by the cameras, surrounded by his Lampre teammates. Sitting in 4th overall, 5 minutes and 14 seconds behind Vincenzo Nibali. And less than a minute behind, 55 seconds behind, is his teammate Niemiec. And if there had been an awful lot of nice things said about Rafał Majka, he's at the beginning of his career. Well, Niemiec is 33 years of age, but he rode his first Grand Tour only 2 years ago, finished 15th in the Vuelta. Mark Cavendish is being encouraged, but Niemiec, 5th overall, 6 minutes and 9 seconds behind, is also having a wonderful Giro d'Italia. Well, the peloton will soon be riding into a wall of snow banked either side of them. They can start to see the little bits of white left and right, and they know what's coming, especially having seen the Galibier last Sunday. Visconti racing up through the mist and the snow and the fog to a famous victory at the Pantani Monument. This is the summit of Trecime de Lavaredo, the highest point of this year's Giro d'Italia. In a way, they were kind of lucky to get it, weren't they, that the Lavaredo is still in there. It would have been disappointing if in retrospect they realised that the highest point of the Giro was somewhere else. It was at the Galibier perhaps last week. At Scott J. Barrow on Twitter has sent the link to the roadbook, to the Garibaldi. Oh, and of course, Ben Atkins pointed out that it was Rafael Andreato who was leading the the intermediate classification, so wanted the points for that. So that's why he was challenging Cavendish. So he had a pretty good reason to be there, and it's probably why Cavendish stopped arguing, because he'd be well able to give him a piece of his mind. And in fairness, it is a sprints competition, so if he feels he's perfectly entitled to compete for it. Cavendish down, Cadel Evans, I should say, down there in the middle. Man sitting 2nd overall. The average race speed, and remember, this has been pretty much uphill the whole way. It's been up, steadily rising all the way, and it's still well over 41 kilometers an hour for the riders. Eddy Merckx remembers his great victory at Trecime de Lavaredo in the following terms: "It was the greatest effort of my life." And he made some pretty epic ones. Not least, of course, his hour record success, which he said took years off his life. And that's just how arduous this finishing climb is. First of all, they've got to go up the Tre Croce. Once they get to Cortina d'Ampezzo, and that's the point of the second intermediate sprint, well, then the road, well, it's been rising anyway for quite a while, but then there's that's the point at which the climb officially begins. And then they've got a couple of kilometers at 7.8%, and it kind of steadies off a little bit to 7.1%, but it's pretty much 7.5% steadily all the way to the top of the Passo Tre Croce. And that'll be the softening up opportunity for the general classification and the riders riding for stage honours. Then they've got a little bit of a descent for about 3 kilometers. Then it starts to rise up gently. One short ramp of a kilometer, another small little descent, and then the final few kilometers up to Trecime de Lavaredo. So it's just under 22 kilometers from the bottom of the Tre Croce to the top of Trecime de Lavaredo, and you could, you know, it wouldn't be too difficult to argue that that is the same climb. It's a little bit like Telegraph Galibier or other combinations you can think of. So Adam Hansen is making adjustments to his clothing as he prepares for things to get very cold indeed, and it's starting to get chilly for the riders, but the action is starting to hot up. 4.25 minutes advantage for this group as they head into the snow. Sean, care to pick out any favourites for today? Obviously, the general classification men have looked very strong. That's why they're in the GC. But has anyone saved a bit of energy for this one that you could possibly pick out? The ambition is clear for the Colombian team. So too for AG2R Le Mondial. They're assisting with the chase.
Yes, and of course, two teams who have been riding real well in this race but haven't got a stage victory, and they've got the riders in the team, you know, with the stage finish coming up that will suit them. So we can see their AG2R get a bit more involved as we get closer to the final of this stage and the uphill finish. Again, the situation at the moment, 41 kilometers at just over 4 minutes. It's going to be, you know, somebody out of the main peloton is going to contest for stage honours, and the ones who are quite a long way down in general classification, they will have the advantage, because if they go in the attack a bit earlier, and as you said, this climb, it goes up in two steps. You know, the first step it goes up to 7.58 kilometers, then it goes down for a bit, and then it continues on up to the finish. You know, there's a possibility there we could see some of the riders who are totally out of the general classification but going for stage victory, they will try and get away before the final 5-6 kilometers of the climb, because at that point everybody will be contesting for stage victory. If you get in there in the final 5-6k, then the general classification men will also be thinking, well, I can, you know, get a stage victory here, and that goes to Nibali, it goes to Evans, Rigoberto Urán, all of those guys, Scarponi of course. So it's going to be a difficult one to pick out a stage victory here today, but I think the general classification men, it looks like some of those guys could, you know, take the honours of the stage today.
The men to watch out for, Bardiani Valvoli are crowding around towards the back of the peloton, and perhaps thinking more about just trying to make it through to the finish. Got that stage victory early on in the race for Enrico Battiglin. Unfortunately, he crashed out, broken ribs, punctured lung. He did get out of hospital yesterday, but and of course Stefano Perazzi is their mountain goat. He's wearing the blue mountains jersey classification, and he's pretty much home and dried for that. Dry is probably not the right term, bearing in mind the conditions that they're heading into. Oh, and just to let you know, it was at Giro d'Italia where I got that Eddy Merckx quote. They've been great during the Giro, the sort of little tidbits of information and the enthusiasm and support. Now Adam Hansen has his rain jacket on, flapping in the breeze. Not exactly an aerodynamic. That's a gilet, actually, isn't it? No sleeves. And he'll look to zip that up as things get a little bit colder. So the 4 riders up front, 4 minutes and 10 seconds to the good, inside 25 miles to go, 39.5 kilometers. Jaro Ermetti, Pavel Brut, Adam Hansen and Jaroslav Popovic from Androni Giocattoli, Katusha, Lotto Belisol and Radio Shack respectively. And there's a different pattern to the peloton now, because Euskaltel are still setting the agenda up there. Now they've got a little bit of help from Colombia, AG Tour Le Mondial, but you can see the way the riders are starting to mass at the front. Those that have ambition are starting to try and make their way up. Meanwhile, riders further down in the peloton are all lined out in one big long string and waiting for the inevitable, and hoping that they can last as long as possible so that they can stay as well, get finished as quickly as possible and make sure they're inside the time limit. For many of those riders, that will be the big ambition. Well, Popovic has still pounding out a rhythm. And looking very strong indeed. And from Ukraine, 33 years of age now. He's taken stage victories in the Tour de France. Third on GC in the Giro d'Italia in 2003, as Sean mentioned earlier. He's also finished 5th in 2004. Top Tour de France finish was 8th back in 2007. But career dwindled a little bit after that. Started out with Langbao Credit and then moved across to the Discovery Channel squad, where he made his name initially. From then to Silence Lotto, Astana, and then to Radio Shack since 2010. And of course the future of this team in a certain amount of doubt in terms of sponsorship from next year. I understand that Radio Shack have decided that they won't be involved next year.
Yes, I believe that's the case, where they decided that they went their term in sponsorship of cycling, and a lot of teams in that situation where the sponsorship is coming to an end, and of course some of the sponsors that do so many years in cycling, then they go on to something else, they go to another sport, for example. And at the moment there's a number of teams, Vacances Soleil, which we see here just in a shot at the moment. They're also one which the sponsorship have decided that they have done their time in cycling, and we will definitely see them in some other sports, and it's always the case where they do a number of years.
Where they're clearing a little bit, yeah, it's such a precarious existence for these teams. They pretty much only have the sponsorship as their source of income, and there's no TV money and no franchise opportunities in the same way there are with other sporting series. There's no obvious sporting series attached to cycling. It's a series of huge events. There's of course the World Tour, but the funds from that are not distributed in any way to the teams, much to their discombobulation. So it can be a precarious existence running a race team. And when you've got the likes of Danilo De Luca making his own special contribution, well, it doesn't make it easy when you're out there trying to sell sponsorship. So Pavel Brut pushing hard inside 4 minutes now, 3 minutes and 42 seconds. How much further will these riders make it? Will they make it to the top of the Tre Croci? And which of these riders is strong enough to perhaps press on? No gloves for Adam Hansen. No mitts either, so when did he take his mitts off to get gloves? You see a lot of pros that don't wear any sort of gloves, even sleeveless ones, even sleeveless mitts. You know, I think it's nuts.
Yes, it is a risk, because when you get a fall, of course, you put your hands down. It's the first reaction you do to save yourself. You put your hand down on the road, and you can get quite a lot of burden. And if you get the palms of your hands badly burdened, road rash, well, then to hold the handlebars, to use your brakes, it can be a problem. And we do see a number of riders, but you know, there would be 90%, I reckon, that would be using the race mitts.
So riders starting to struggle at the back. Bardiani Valvole's riders, Blanco team towards the back, and Colombia riders making their way back up from the cars. Jaronson Pantano involved in the breakaways early in the race. Haven't seen too much of him in recent days. This could be a chance for him to shine, although it looks as if he's riding in support of his other team members. And there's the profile, so that gives you an indication of what these riders have faced today. It's just went downhill for a little while after the start and just went up and up and up. And we're just coming to the top of this climb, which hasn't really been classified in any way. The Cimabanci. 3.5 minutes to the good, and then there'll be a brief respite before they get climbing up the Tre Croci. And now Colombia showing serious intent, as indeed have Euskaltel. Cannondale to the fore as well. They've been disappointing in this race, you would have to say. Just that, well, excellent performance in the time trial a couple of days ago from Damiano Caruso, finishing in third place behind Sanchez and Nibali, but not the stage win that they would like, and haven't been a factor overall. Elia Viviani wasn't quite able to put it up to Mark Cavendish in the sprints. Well, Viviani's still in the race, so you never know. Has an opportunity. Final roll of the dice in Brescia, and you can be sure that's going to be an absolutely hectic sprint tomorrow, because it's last chance saloon for an awful lot of the teams, and the Italian ones will be very, very motivated. Okay, inside 35 kilometers to go for the four riders out front. Let's name check them again. Pavel Brut of the Katusha squad, 113th overall, but a former Giro d'Italia stage winner. Rolling through on the front is Jaroslav Popovic of the Radio Shack team. He'll be followed in turn by Adam Hansen of Lotto Belisol, already a stage winner in this race, and struggling with the pace a little bit, it would appear, is Jaro Ermetti of Androni Giocattoli, just missing a turn there. Perhaps he's taking the opportunity for a little bit to eat, but Ermetti misses a turn. And otherwise, the four riders up front have been working very well indeed. Their advantage now, though, down to 3 minutes and 18 seconds. As Cialinghi of the Blanco team at the back, making sure he's got his gloves on. Things are starting to get very cold indeed. Cialinghi's interesting in that he's a vegetarian, isn't he? So he's ridden around Italy for the last three weeks. Riding vegetarian is not easy. Probably easier now, a lot easier than it would have been in Sean's day, of course, as a lot of the teams bring their own chefs to the hotels and completely set their own dietary agenda. Okay, coming down fast, the gap to the four up front. Join us for the next part after these. It's stage 20 of the Giro d'Italia from Silandro to Trecime de Lavaredo, the highest point of this year's Giro d'Italia. This stage has been badly affected by the weather in terms of route management, but we've had a great race today. Four riders out front have really put it up to the peloton. Now their advantage, though, is down to 3 minutes and 5 seconds as we head towards the first of two classified climbs on the day. But I can tell you, the road has been going up for much of the afternoon. And now the Cannondale squad goes to the front. The Euskaltel team have set the pace for pretty much the whole day on the front of the peloton, aided laterally by Colombia. AG Tour Le Mondial have got involved. Oh, so Greg Ball. Disappointment for the man from Vacansoleil, has had to climb off on the second last day of the race, having ridden all over Italy. That's a huge disappointment for Greg Ball, sitting 129th overall, just under 3 hours in arrears. But no doubt he would love to have made it all the way to Brescia tomorrow. So that's a cruel disappointment for Greg Ball. But meanwhile, up front, the four riders press on and hope to make it to the top of the Tre Croce, at least in the lead. Well, they've been working well together. Giro Armetti on the front for Androni Giocattoli. Pavel Brut is in there for Katusha. Adam Hansen for Lotto Belisol, and Jaroslav Popovic of the Radio Shack team. Now we see Cannondale. As I said, it was Euskaltel. Then they were given a bit of a dig out by the Colombian squad. AG Tour Le Mondial got involved. And now Cannondale have gone to the front. And they're piling on the pressure and closing down the gap as BMC are starting to line up on the right-hand side, and that's interesting to see them so early in this stage, assembling towards the front. Are they just going to play a watching brief? Are they going to try and get involved? Garate at the back of the peloton, feeling the pace, and that tells you all you need to know. This is set to be absolutely relentless from now to the finish. And Sean, the attacks have happened, and actually I said Hermetti was not contributing early on because he might have been struggling. Well, he's gone off the front like a scalded cat. So, and a bit of a surprise to see that it's on this short descent before we start the Tre Croce.
Yes, is it an attack, or is it that he's going downhill that bit better than the other three? Is possible here, and taking a bit of risk. We can see the road, there is damp patches, and I don't think he's going to continue on his own at this moment. And you know, under the 3 minutes now with 30 kilometres to go. Teams taking it up in the front. Cannondale, of course, pretty desperate to try and get something out of this race, as we mentioned in the earlier part of our programme. You know, haven't got a stage victory. General classification, their best man is a long ways down, Caruso, and he would be the man I'd expect to try and get something out of the stage today, as there are other teams as well. You know, we have seen Euskaltel, another team who haven't won a stage, and would be expecting to come here to get at least one stage victory out of it. Maybe general classification with Sammy Sanchez, but you know, he's a long ways off in general classification, 10th. It's not the place that he would be, you know, really riding for. He would be thinking, you know, of a place in the podium, or at least a top 5. And we see the Columbia team, who have been so active but still haven't got a stage victory. And Androni, of course, is a team over the years, when you look back, you know, they always manage to get a stage victory. They have been very active, and you know, you can be sure they will try something on the final climb. But the teams who are really under pressure, being pushed on here, and trying to, you know, control the race and get into a position, get their best man in the position to try and get a stage victory. Final throw of the dice today, because tomorrow is the day for the sprinters.
So the Cannondale squad on the front, and surely the man that they're targeting to try and get into position will be Damiano Caruso. Finished third at the time trial a couple of days ago, so he's clearly finishing the Giro d'Italia with good legs. That was an uphill time trial, so he is climbing well. And if they are setting this kind of a pace, I won't say it's early in the stage, but it's early in the end game, then you would think that perhaps Caruso is thinking about going for a long one.
Well, I think keep the pace real high, and by doing that with a team, you know, if you have a full team as well and a complete team, and that is the interesting one, 5 teams at the moment still in the race with a complete number of riders, so 9 riders in Cannondale. You know, you can put 3 or 4 riders to really push on here, and you still have 2 to stay with your, you know, your man who is going to do the end of the stage, try and go for a victory. So that is a big advantage, and you know, there's a lot of teams who have lost 4 riders, so their power is diminished by a big way when you look at that. So you know, they're right on the front first of all, because your best man for the stage victory, well, he's going to see that the team is all riding for you. It puts a bit of pressure on him, and in that way, you know, he's going to be a bit more motivated when they get into the final climb of the day.
Cannondale towards the front. Now they're given a little bit of assistance. By my reckon, yeah, four teams still have their full complement of 9 riders left in this race. actually make that 3, because Vacansoleil had 9 riders going into this stage, but they've just lost Greg Abol. Not got confirmation of exactly why he's had to retire, but disappointment for him. So that's 3 teams. That's the Movistar team, absolutely flying the whole race. Lotto Belisol had that stage win thanks to Adam Hansen. So Adam Hansen there on screen is in the break today, showing the colours well. And the Cannondale Pro Cycling team. So of those 3 teams, the team that has most to prove, I suppose, and needs something out of this stage is the Cannondale squad, and they're on the front of the bunch pushing hard. Now 2 3/4 minutes for those riders up front, and they must be feeling very tired indeed at this stage. Now the Columbia squad pushing hard. And Omega Pharma Quick-Step working their way to the front as well. Remember, with 22.1 kilometres to go, we have the second intermediate sprint of the day. Another opportunity for Mark Cavendish to take another 2 points to add to his points total. You can see BMC assembling towards the front a few minutes ago. They've slotted back in, so that question I got about whether perhaps they were thinking about bringing Cadel up for the sprint, well, I don't think that was ever really on. I think they just happened to find themselves a little bit closer. Mark Cavendish in there, still recognisable with his red jersey, although his teammates are starting to put on their black jackets. The weather is closing in for these riders, and still they've got lots and lots, a lot of climbing to do. The next intermediate sprint point will be about 1,200 metres. They're probably about 1,300 metres now. And then it ramps up to 2,000. There's about 1,000 metres higher to go before the finish of today's stage. Four riders on the front, 2 3/4 minutes to the good. It's on the front for the Radio Shack team, Jaroslav Popovic. And sitting just behind him, Adam Hansen of the Lotto Belisol squad. Third in line there in the red colours of Katusha is Pavel Brut, and fourth for Androni Giocattoli in the white and blue colours. That's Giro Ermetti of Italy. Popovic pushing on. And now we get to those roads that are glistening with the moisture and the snow and rain that has fallen relentlessly. The whole Cannondale team is on the front. Fabio Felline makes his way back into the bunch.
And we've just seen an AG2R rider on the right hand side stopping there, and there's a lot of teammates also slowing. There's 2 here, and there's also at least another 1 weighted back with the rider looking like he had a mechanical, and it has to be one of their main men for the
they're waiting, yeah.
Pozzovivo or Betancourt.
Of course, Pozzovivo crashed on the descent off the Telegraph heading to the Galibier, didn't he, on the big stage last week, so he's had disappointing moments. They'll be very concerned too if it's Carlos Betancourt, perhaps more concerned, bearing in mind he's further up general classification, sitting 7th and just 2 seconds off in the race for young rider honours.
And Popovic pushes on here. We can see it's not looking nice here. The wet streets, wet corners, and Popovic is the one who is taking that bit more risk. As we can see, the other 3 are following on there, but not getting around the corners as fast as Popovic. And we're coming to this point now where the intermediate sprint, so maybe he's thinking just push on a bit more here and get maximum points and the prize pot of €500.
So who's the strongest man in the break? It would appear that it is Jaroslav Popovic. He's opened up a little bit of an advantage, so now the 3 riders behind having to scrabble to get back on terms. Coming to the second intermediate sprint point, the first rider through the last time round was Pavel Brut. Riders weren't really contesting it. I don't think they're contesting it in any real terms here either, because this is more about Popovic trying to steal a march on his erstwhile companions and friends in the breakaway, and now they've become competitors.
Careful.
Yeah, those difficult road surfaces. Popovic works his way. The speed that these riders go uphill, still they need to be careful, and as Sean said, he just gets it onto this cobbled surface, and Pavel Brut is chasing him. Adam Hansen in turn. These riders separated.
Betancourt.
Yeah, it looks like Carlos Betancourt that's chasing back on. So the man that is sitting 7th overall, 2 seconds in arrears just from Rafael Majka, and that means 2 seconds down to the young rider classification, and that's a little bit of extra energy that he's expending at just the point that he doesn't really want to. So the road is rising now as we go to the lower slopes of the Tre Croci, and through the intermediate sprint point was Jaroslav Popovic, followed in turn by Brut, Hansen and Ermetti. And it's a little bit of a rise up through Cortina d'Ampezzo. And that will be difficult for Mark Cavendish, but he'll consider getting to that point almost like getting to the end of the stage, except of course he then has to ride another 22 kilometres uphill to make sure he's inside the time limit. But for him, that's the finish line for him.
Yes, well, he will make that as it is the end of the stage for him, and then get up the climb at his in his rhythm, and it's not going to be a problem the time limit when you get to the bottom of the final climb. With only 22 kilometres to go, well then you have no problem in getting there, and we can see here it's the Cannondale pushing on all the time. Betancourt, his AG2R teammates here trying to get back in, and it's not a nice section of road here, with the wet and through the cars, a little bit technical here and there, so it's going to take a little bit of energy, a little bit of an effort for Betancourt to get back in here, because we can see Cavendish just taking it up at the front of the bunch, and to ensure the points that are left on the line here for the points classification overall.
So Mark Cavendish's efforts to take the 2 points on offer at the second of the 2 intermediate sprints also amounts to closing down the breakaway up front. And he's very, very careful. Gets the warning from the marshal that they're just turning onto this cobbled section. Cavendish takes it very easy. The Pearl of the Dolomites, they call Cortina d'Ampezzo, in the valley of the Poitou River. World-renowned destination for winter and summer tourism, of course. Hosted the 1960 Winter Olympics. The circle of peaks that watch over the town form a crown known as the Queen of the Dolomite. The Tofane, Cristallo, Felorio, Sorapis, Croda del Lago and Nuvolao. So Mark Cavendish gets the job done. Ermetti was certainly struggling of the other riders. Popovic had a not insignificant gap, but not a definitive one over the other riders. Meanwhile, Betancourt tries to get back in, and I suppose the job here is not to panic.
Yes, it's not the place to panic, because we can see it is a technical section here, very dangerous with the corners, the small cobblestone sections that through the streets here, and they are getting back comfortably here. We can see them, they're not panicking, and that's something you certainly do not want to do here with Betancourt, because if you have a problem with somebody fall on the corner, well then it just scares everybody. And we can see here they're in the cavalcade of cars, but this effort now, he has to make his way up through the bunch, and it's going to be stretched out a lot, this main peloton. So for Betancourt, it's not a good moment to have a mechanical at all.
That was a back wheel change for Betancourt, we understand, as we see the three riders back together, and Pavel Brut then presses on with Adam Hansen for company. Looks like Popovic has cracked the man who kicked this all off. And Pavel Brut tapping out a rhythm that is just too much for Adam Hansen, so Brut moves on. His climb 7.95 kilometers in total, 7.5% average, and a maximum of 12% for the riders. That little 12% ramp comes 6.2 kilometers into the climb. It's pretty steady at 7%. Little about 2 kilometers into it, there's a little 9% section that's going to hurt. And look at this, Cadel Evans has gone to the front, and Vincenzo Nibali is right with him. In fact, that's slightly caught out the other Astana riders, but they're right there, and already cracks are starting to appear. I suspect it's is it Carlos Betancourt they're thinking about, trying to put him behind for the day. Inside 3 minutes to the riders in front, but now the GC riders get together for the big push. These are really worrying moments for Carlos Betancourt, because he's using up big energies in the cars coming towards the back of the bunch, but these riders will be getting shelled out big time, and he's going to have to ride around them as Pavel Brut hits the 20 kilometers to go mark. There's a long way to go to the finish, I can tell you. It's just 20 kilometers, 12.5 miles, and now the weather really starts to turn for the riders, and there'll be pain and misery out there. Certain amount of excitement and adrenaline too. Now attacks coming off the front. Blanco, Orica Green Edge.
Meaning from Orica Green Edge, as we've seen him many times in this race, getting in the good breakaways, but just not managing to get enough of an advantage to hold on out there and go on for stage victory. Although the stage that Visconti won, that was a breakaway which he did survive out, but if this starts that attack in the earlier slopes, it's going to make the race very difficult for a lot of people. And Betancourt, we did see that he was just getting onto the tail end of the bunch, but it's going to take a couple of kilometres before he makes his way all the way to the front of the bunch, to the big favourites.
Yeah, it's a big worrying moment for Carlos Betancourt.
Weaning once again pushing on here, and
he's shown great form for Orica Green Edge throughout this race, says Peter Weaning. And
but so difficult at this point in the race when you have all the big favourites and a group of 50 riders plus at the moment, and there's teams who want control the front of the bunch because they have riders there who they feel that can get a stage victory out of it. And to ride away like this, you're going to take 10 seconds advantage, but to have any chance to go on and contest for a stage victory still with just under 19 kilometres to go, it's so difficult here to do that.
Now, who's the Blanco behind? Could it be Kelderman or Kreuzvik? Remember, Robert Gessink has gone home. Peter Weaning pushing on. Not of massive concern to Vincenzo Nibali, so he won't be thinking about controlling. He is the leading rider, though, for the Orica Green Edge team in terms of general classification, although that is just 44th overall. Over an hour behind, hour and a quarter down. And three riders assembled behind Weaning. And we see Euskaltel, just two of their riders in this group. Betancourt's not there, but I can tell you Rafael Maika certainly is.
Number one bus.
Pelazzotti gets there for the Androni team. Now the Puma's there, of course, as well for Colombian team, but just grappling his way up this hill. And this is that little section that's particularly demanding. Daniel Kangert looks comfortable, so too does Vincenzo Nibali. We're hearing that Carlos Betancourt is almost a minute behind these riders, and this could make the decision in the young rider competition. It could also put paid to Carlos Betancourt's hopes of finishing in the top 6 in this race. Peter Weening has a little look behind. You see the elevation that he gains with every 50 meters, towering above the riders that are less than a few hundred meters behind him on the road. Pavel Brut slogging out a rhythm out of the saddle. He can only do that for so long. This is the penultimate climb of the Giro d'Italia. Up to Tre Croce, but then there's a very short descent, and then they're climbing again. So you could say it's the last climb, depending on how you look at it. There are points though at the top of Tre Croce. So he's got 20-second advantage over this group. Has Peter Weening. 2 minutes 22 to Pavel Brut. Surely that's not enough, but he does seem to be climbing well at the moment. Vincenzo Nibali is looking very comfortable, and the Astana team slotting in front of him, ready to help him out. Now, the urgency of those car horns indicates that there's a serious general classification man. And gets a little assistance from a fellow countryman, Fabio Parra, the great Colombian rider. Suggested that the Colombian riders should get together to ride against Vincenzo Nibali in this race. Well, they never had an opportunity to do that, but Marentes, as he's going backwards, it's not strictly legal, but I do sincerely hope that he's not given any sort of a penalty for that. Didn't gain much out of it, and didn't ask for it either. We understand that Pavel Brut has over a minute's advantage now over Adam Hansen and Jaroslav Popovic, so he's really climbing well and has pretty much destroyed the hopes of his other breakaway companions. So Pavel Brut, stage winner in the Giro d'Italia a few years ago, is going very well indeed.
And this Cadel just setting the pace here. Verdugo on the front, keeping a good rhythm, but certainly not, keeping it real high for the moment. It's just under 18 kilometers. They know that the most difficult part has to come. This, the final section of the climb. That's where the tactic is to try and do something with Samuel Sanchez and. Brut holding on out here at the moment. The way the peloton is going to hold on for quite a while, but the moment we get some attacks out of this group of big favourites, well, then that advantage of just over 2 minutes for Pavel Brut will come down so quickly, because he is going to suffer every kilometre he goes on here. He's going to start running out of energy, as we see Betancourt doing a great job making it back into this group. Super ride, making it back in. Carlos Betancourt was almost a minute down at one stage not so long ago, and he's dropped all his teammates. Perazzi's out the back. We've also heard that Santangelo is struggling, and at the back we heard that Perazzi just a few moments ago, so a little bit of a garbled message in my ear there is Stefano Perazzi strikes out for glory, accompanied by Adapuma. And is it going to be one of those Perazzi attacks that lasts about 10 or 15 seconds, or can he settle down to the long slog of closing the gap to Pavel Brut out front? 2 minutes advantage, and what a super ride by Carlos Betancourt. Now, how much has that taken out of him? He just gets on the blower. He said, I'm back in. And also to find out exactly what's the situation up front. Maybe he's calling the car, and maybe he needs some adjustment to his brakes, because if he did change a wheel, often we see that where you need to make the adjustment. But also when you're out the rear of the group, you don't know what's after happening in that 5-7 kilometres which you've been down in the cars, and just to find out what is the position out front, that's also important. We've seen Betancourt make the mistake already in this race where he thought he was going for a stage victory, so interesting to see if the car comes up, or if it will be allowed to come up at this moment, because there are so many riders in between here scattered on this climb.
Laurent Biondi in the AG2R car will be called up. As Peter Weening slogs on. So aggressive, so committed. Yet to come up with the big result though in this year's Giro d'Italia. Pavel Brut up front. Hansen closing a little bit. He's managed to put 10 seconds into Pavel Brut. So Hansen is still pushing on, and perhaps Brut has... That's the summit of what he can manage, because Hansen's closed 10 seconds. Still 2 minutes between the leader, 2 minutes and 7 seconds between the leader and Stefano Perazzi, who's just in front of the general classification group. So just over half a minute between Peter Weening and the Vincenzo Nibali group. It's a big gear that he's grinding out, but he's got long legs, big levers, pushing on those cranks, dragging him up this hill. And that's Ermetti from the initial break that...
Yes, we see Weening just going by him there, and it's day over for Ermetti, of course, with this difficult climb. He's giving it everything, and all the four breakaway riders are going to really suffer, as we're still over 16 kilometres to the finish, and the peloton of big favourites, the riders who think they can get a stage victory out are all playing the waiting game here, and it looks like that the Escatel, it's going to be the final climb up here to the finish, and at Laveredo, it's going to be it's going to be all on the finals.
This is just the softener up, remember?
Number of kilometres.
Yeah, but it's great to see so much action this early in the stage. This, as I say, it's because the first climb is coming so late in the stage, riders are ready to go for it, and there's just a short descent, of course, before they really go for the Trecime de Lavaredo. So Pavel Brut pushing on, now 1:12 to the good. Pavel Brut out of the saddle once more, and looking like he's really starting to struggle. Meanwhile, Ermetti is just about to be caught by Adapuma, and Adapuma has pressed on. He's not got Perazzi for company anymore, as Ermetti and then Popovic resign to their fate. They stay to the left and just look over their right shoulder to get a grandstand view of what's happening as the riders arrive towards the top of the Tre Croci. Still a couple of kilometres to go, mind, according to my road book, but as I say, these things can change inside a minute now for Weening. Oh, and Pavel Brut's mouth couldn't be any wider as he tries to gulp in the air. The air is going to be cold on his lungs. Now Adam Hansen falls victim to the relentless power and strength of Peter Weening. So Adapuma is now just 10 seconds down on Peter Weening, and Peter Weening has a half a minute to the Vincenzo Nibali group, and 1:10 between Peter Weening and the rider up front, Pavel Brut. So Adapuma is coming up at a great rate. Peter Weening continues to slog away, and now the general classification group, perhaps little bit of a truce there. Those riders that are going to attack out of it have probably done their attacking. It's just pace being set on the front. Oh, it wasn't just a rear wheel change. We've just heard that Carlos Betancourt actually had to change his bike. Now he will have a bike that'll be absolutely perfectly set up for him. It'll be identical specification and settings, so it shouldn't affect him. It shouldn't feel too different for him.
And we can see Saxo Tinkoff pushing on the front of the group there with their young jersey classification man. So they're taking it up here, and here we go.
Trying to put Betancourt under pressure?
Yes, well, they realise that the race is on, and Betancourt is having mechanical problems at a very bad moment here. Initially, we did not see what the problem. Did he change a wheel? Did he change a bike? But again, he seems to be changing once again at a real vital moment.
Here's a second category climb. So 9 points on offer. 8 kilometres, 7.5% average. It's a tough one. Here's Betancourt coming back. So maybe that message was actually that he's changed his bike since the rear wheel change. So he got a rear wheel change, and now I think he's gone back and got another bike, so he's coming back up. So these are troublesome times, and that's why Saxo Tinkoff are pushing on. Twice he's had to stop on this climb, has Carlos Betancourt. Meanwhile, Pavel Brut gets a little bit of relief from the gradient. Peter Weening still pushing on. And now look at the advantage has moved out between himself. He's now 23 seconds between himself and Adapuma. Last gap we got was just 10 seconds. So Adapuma is still hanging on as he moves past Adam Hansen, the man from the early break, and Hansen's just crawling at this moment. All sorts of pain for him. Pavel Brut, though, still full of fight as he comes to the 15 kilometres to go mark. Still got about a kilometre left of this climb, and carrying just over a minute's advantage. So he's lost 5 seconds to Peter Weening in the last half a kilometre. So he should be able to hang on for the points at the top, but what sort of an advantage will he have as they push for the final summit of Trecime de Lavaredo? Adapuma, though, will it happen for him as Saxo Tinkoff pile on the pressure, pile on the pain on Carlos Betancourt trying to get back in. Saw Betancourt coming past the neutral service car, so he should be just at the back of this group, but still far from ideal. Agnoli takes off his jacket. Other riders are putting them on and zipping them up. Well, Agnoli probably feeling the pace a little bit, but well, what an incredible supporter and helper he's been for Vincenzo Nibali in this year's race. Well, if that one's to be believed, it's a complete revolution in the timing. So that latest update suggests that Peter Weening is about to be closed down by this monstrous effort. And here come the attacks. And it's our man Perazzi, the mountains classification leader, finds the effort and finds the strength for another push towards the top of this climb.
It's never ending.
So 45 seconds, we understand, between Pavel Brut and Peter Weening as Stefano Perazzi. Well, if that last check that we got was accurate, then we ought to be able to see Peter Weening just ahead. difficult to pick. Well, I could just pick him out.
You can see him out there, and Perazzi just going through the kilometre to the summit for the King of the Hills classification. It looks like that he's pushing on quite well there. Will he be...
It's an interesting choice, though. I mean, if he's just going for the mountains points, should he have just waited until a bit later, or is he trying to mop up other riders?
No, I think he's just going for the mountain points, and he's got the jersey, and we've seen him so many times when he goes in the attacks. Looks like he's losing contact with his breakaway companions, then suddenly comes back with a big effort again, and just goes past the ones who already dropped him on the climb, and that is his way of climbing. You see here now, like he's pulling out a bit, but it looks like he can ride away from it. Then suddenly he just starts to really weaken and just slows down so much, but can recover very quickly. Give him a couple of 100 metres in the wheel there, and then he can go in the attack again, and he's been at that for all this Giro on the big climbs.
It is almost June. It's hard to believe, isn't it? It's like that's like a Christmas card picture, isn't it? The Twitter debate has started, as you might expect. Gareth Barry is asking, should Saxo be pushing on with the bike change for Betancourt, waiting a bit? Pavel Brut really struggling now. He should hang on to the top of this climb, but he's in a world of pain at the moment. But I mean, is it okay for Saxo to push on and try and hammer a nail into the coffin of Carlos Betancourt's ambitions?
That's a debatable. A debate we've had so many times. When the race is going on, you're in the final, you continue on in the race, but again...
But would they have gone to the front if Carlos Betancourt was sitting in there in the group?
I don't know, that is the question, because Saxo Bank were not pushing on at the time. He did have the mechanical problem, and that's where there's the question. If you're riding on the front with your team and you're making the race difficult, then some of the favourites have a mechanical problem. You just continue on, but normally if you're not contributing on the front and pushing the pace, well, then you do not do it while he is out there recovering from his mechanical problem.
Betancourt safely in there, of course, and Saxo have switched off the taps for a little while as on the front of the race, and coming to the top of the climb of the Passo Tre Croce is the man out front in the race, Pavel Brut of Katusha. He's going to take the 9 points on offer at the top of the climb. And Tony Lusardi is asking what chainring are the riders using on a climb like this. 39 inner chainring would be fine for this one. There is a little bit of an 18% section on the next climb though, but I don't think the riders would go to a compact. I would, but those guys they're capable of doing a lot more. So Pavel Brut takes the top points at the top of the climb. Peter Weening. Let's get the time gap to him at the top of the climb as he has a little look around and looks very much in control. Just 26 seconds down.
And Perazzi comes over in third position, so he's going to pick up some points for the mountain classification.
I think that pretty much does it. Stefano Perazzi just has to ride to Brescia tomorrow, and he will wear the mountains jersey on the podium in Brescia tomorrow, assuming he makes it. So congratulations to him. That has to be officially confirmed, of course. There's no way my maths teacher would take that at face value without adding it up himself. Cycling Mold thinks Betancourt never works. He always sits at the back of groups and never helps, so Saxo are right. Well, it's a different thing when it comes to the hills, isn't it? But that's one viewpoint for sure. The Astana team on the front now, try and steady it up. This is a tricky descent now before we get to the final climb. Gianluca Brambilla of the Amiga Pharma Quickstep team has done wonderful work for Mark Cavendish on the flat stages, controlling the pace on the front. Spent long hour after hour slugging it out, and now he's been let off the leash, and here's an opportunity in his home Grand Tour to try and go for it for himself. And Vincenzo Nibali to the front of his group, a couple of teammates ahead of him. Otherwise he's taking it as gingerly as possible. Having said that, there are few riders in the current pro peloton that have as much confidence as him on a wet road going downhill. But then I suppose this close to a victory, such a cherished victory indeed, all sorts of little doubts will start to creep into his mind. But for Vincenzo Nibali, safely negotiated that. Now the road starts to rise again. And now Peter Weening is joined by Gianluca Brambilla. That's Pirazzi just behind, the mountains classification leader from Bardiani Valboli. Gianluca Brambilla comes around and about 1 second later gives a little flick for Peter Weening, but Peter Weening will take a little breather and look to go again. Movistar on the attack. Eros Kopecky to see what he can do for the Spanish squad, already with 4 stage wins. Tanel Kangert moves back up towards the front of the group to support the man third place there, Vincenzo Nibali in the Maglia Rosa. 23 seconds now between the 3 riders ahead of this group and Pavel Brut. So Brut just had a little ramp there, then the descent continues. Yet to get to this climb to Trecime Lavaredo, but it's coming shortly. It starts with 7 kilometers to go, so about 3.5 kilometers left of descending. And then the gloves are off. Well, the gloves will stay on, I'm sure, for the weather, but they're off in terms of, in the metaphorical terms, in terms of the battle. And Eros Kopecky joins up. Ten kilometers to go. Just over 6 miles of racing. Pavel Brut tiptoes his way down this tricky descent. And it will only serve to make these riders very cold indeed after the efforts they've made, Sean.
Yes, and this is where you have to be wrapped up a bit, because if you have stripped off too early and you can get real cold here, and then you do not recover after that. If the cold gets into you and you're suffering a lot on the final climb, well then you're going to have major difficulty, and it's such conditions here for the riders. It's going to be a real test to get onto the final climb, to get into the rhythm. It's going to be difficult, and we can see here Astana are just floating down this one, taking it easy. As you said, they're not going to take any risk here with Nibali, because out front there's no danger at all, and the guys who are out there on the final climb, they will be swallowed up anyway when the race starts between the big favourites in this group behind. Well, the advantage here for Pavel Brut will just melt down in the matter of a kilometre and a half. You can lose a minute and 30.
About the only thing that's melting around here is the lead that Pavel Brut has over the riders chasing behind, and see the way they're just eating into that gap. It's not 17 seconds now, I can tell you. Riders chasing behind: Stefano Pirazzi, Peter Weening, Gianluca Brambilla, Eros Kopecky, and it's Brambilla that's going to be first over to him, shortly followed by Peter Weening of Orica Green Edge. Eros Kopecky has made it across. What's happened to Pirazzi? Pirazzi in the Blue Mountains classification leaders jersey. Looks like he's blown a gasket again. Don't write him off yet though. And Pavel Brut is in all sorts of pain. Look at the difference in the way that he's working his way up this hill. His back is killing him, you can be sure. His shoulders, he's using every muscle that he's got left, and they're all aching, as Pavel Brut is joined by Eros Kopecky of the Movistar team in the black with the green helmet, and Gianluca Brambilla of Amiga Pharma Quickstep in his wheel. So now 3 becomes 4, but for how much longer? Surely Pavel Brut will immediately drop off this group. And there's the group of classification contenders, with Astana setting the tempo. And the man in third wheel is the race leader, being paced comfortably by Valerio Agnoli and Fabio Aru. Eris Kopecky looks like he's making it difficult for Gianluca Brambilla. Peter Weening choosing to sit in the wheel, and Pavel Brud is gone for the day. Still got another 8.5 kilometers of climbing for him. It's going to be tortuous, but Brambilla buries himself to get back onto the wheel of Kopecky, but Kopecky looks very strong at the moment. Kopecky looks around less to see where Brambilla is and more to see where the rest of the group is, and presses on again. And that, well, there's Perazzi as he's about to be closed down, and now the attacks are coming from the Colombians. This their last opportunity for a stage victory. It's Adapuma, their GC man. 20th overall, 25 minutes down on general classification. Darwin Adapuma strikes out for glory on the lower slopes of the Trecime de Lavaredo. Immediately overhauls Stefano Perazzi. Perazzi looks behind. Has he got anything left? We've seen him so often in this year's Giro d'Italia. Just when you think he's dead and buried, he manages to find something, and he certainly has the motivation to try and get back into the wheel of Adapuma. How much longer can he last at this pace? Looking over his shoulder. Oh, such horrible conditions for the riders. Now here's Kopecky setting a rhythm that Peter Weening has moved over in front of Gianluca Brambilla, so he's taken a little bit of a respite as best he could, and now is able to give Kopecky a turn. It's the road levelling out slightly. Then we have a very steep ramp coming up to Col Santangelo. Nibali is, the extremities are really feeling it. You can be sure toes and fingers, regardless of how much effort that the riders are making, are starting to lose feeling. It's the Lake of Misurina, as you see. This is a little flat section. In about a kilometre's time, maybe even less, the road will start to ramp up. You see it there for Eris Kopecky, Peter Weening and Gianluca Brambilla. Initially with a little 8.4% section, and then 13% for the riders for about half a kilometre. And that could well snap the elastic amongst these three riders. Brambilla looking a little bit in difficulty. Perazzi goes to the front. And you've got to admire the heart of this man. Perazzi finds the energy to give Adapuma a turn.
Yes, we've seen it on so many occasions where he just get a little bit of a recovery time, and then he can take it up real strong again. And with Adapuma, he got that, you know, bit of time in the wheel there, and now wants to push on again. Of course, we're in a section here where it's not as steep at the moment, and you know, that's where they're trying to, you know, pull out a little bit of advantage. But you know, back in the peloton, it's just rolling along. Astana continue on setting that pace, but up front here we see, you know, three leaders, Kopecky, Brambilla and Weening. They're giving it their all, still with over 6 kilometers to go. difficult to see them holding on, but again we see Nibali there. He was trying to warm up his fingers, seemed to be very cold, and that's going to have a bearing on the outcome of the stage today. I think a lot of riders, because of the descent, we've been down there very, very cold, and I think that some of the riders will suffer because of that, and maybe not able to go on the attack as they would like to be in the normal weather conditions. But here, like, it's terrible conditions. When you see, it's like a Paris Nice in the beginning of March.
Remarkable weather across Europe, and remarkable scenes on the Lavaredo as the attacks are starting to come out of the GC group. Astana not setting a pace that is putting all the riders under. And here we go, Iris Kopecky has left Brambilla and Weening. That's not really a surprise. We've hit another steep ramp, and Iris Kopecky clearly the strongest of those three riders. 20 odd seconds or less between himself and the Perazzi and Adapuma. Perazzi looks around to see, surveys the scene behind, and they're not too far at all. Adapuma hasn't gone to the front in a little while. He's the one that chased across to Perazzi, of course, and Perazzi looked like he was really struggling at that point. Now, who's this that's come up? It's the GC group. Herrada of the Movistar team is struggling, but meanwhile his teammate up front is going very well indeed. Robert Kieserlowski has joined up with Stefano Perazzi and Darwin Adapuma. Kieserlowski 16th overall at 12 minutes and 5 seconds. Slipped away out of the general classification fight in the last week, but this could be an opportunity for him to grab something amazing from the Giro d'Italia.
Yes, somebody who was that place in general classification will be allowed to ride out of the peloton, and there will not be a reaction immediately. The Astana team, as we can see, they're still just setting the pace on the front, and it is an opportunity for a rider, Kieserlowski, who can finish quite well, and we've seen him a number of days there where he he is that style of rider. He's a good climber, so mountaintop finish, and an opportunity for him to have a go for stage victory, because the general classification, I don't think that's where he would like to be in 16th in the overall classement.
One suggestion on Twitter that cycling could well be a contender for a place in the Winter Olympics, this sort of weather. Iris Kopecky pushes on. Small little relief in the gradient as Robert Kieserlowski goes to the head of this small group. Now, where's Stefano Perazzi? Has he attacked, or has he cracked? Kieserlowski pushing on with Darwin Adapuma. Adapuma now gives him a turn. Still, Astana set the pace, and yet to see a big push from the likes of Cadel Evans. We saw Perazzi there, he'd been caught by that group, so Perazzi's cracked in a big way. But still a great effort from him, and success in his merch as he's confirmed his status in the mountains classification. 5 kilometres to go for the two riders behind, Peter Weening and Gianluca Brambilla. It's now 16 seconds between Iris Kopecky and those two riders chasing. Could Iris Kopecky be on his way to another great success, as we got sight of Rafał Majka struggling to get his cape off? It could have been a dodgy moment for him.
Is he trying to get it on, or is he trying to get it off? It looked like he was trying to put it back on, and riders, really suffering here. And if you're in that situation where you want to put back on your cape at this moment, it tells that he's really suffering, and the cold has got to him big time.
And once the cold gets into your bones, well, there's often nothing you can do about it. You want the legs to go around, you want the muscles to work, but if your core temperature drops to a certain point, it can be really difficult. And with all, despite your, it's not necessarily about willpower. It's just what the muscles will or won't do.
Yes, it's a terrible feeling, and if you slip off, too early, and I think that some of the riders has, made a mistake. We have seen some of the riders. Keselowski, of course, he's all in black there. When he came out of the group, it was just difficult to recognise him. But you need that extra layer with this horrible conditions, and if the cold is really getting into you, well, you can pay in these final 2-3 kilometres.
So now the situation inside the final 4 kilometres. Eris Kopecky is out front, and he's been chased by Peter Weening and Gianluca Brambilla. Atapuma and Keselowski are also ahead of this group of favourites, led by the Astana team and including Vincenzo Nibali. Cadel Evans is in there, so too is Rigoberto Urán. Atapuma and Keselowski, as Brambilla and Weening push on. Chasing hard behind Eris Kopecky. And the Astanas are pushing on, setting a relentless pace. How important is it for Vincenzo Nibali that he wins the stage? So now Peter Weening pushes on from Gianluca Brambilla. The man from Amiga Pharma Quickstep has given a good effort indeed. Great effort from Peter Weening. He's been out there for a while now. 13 seconds just behind Eris Kopecky. So Kopecky, if he falters at all, 32 seconds back to Nibali and co. And you got a sight there of Peter Weening. Pellizotti ready to pounce. Just in front of the Italian road race champion is the red colours of BMC. That's Cadel Evans. Pozzovivo is there, the diminutive figure on the left-hand side of AG Tour.
Nibali goes in the attack here. He's pushing on, and surprising to see that he's
here
doing
comes Vincenzo. Sorry, Sean.
At this point.
This is a key moment in the race. Vincenzo Nibali starting to move ahead of his main rivals, and he even has Tanel Kanger for company. So the Astana team are in the process of blowing apart the general classification group, and this is a key moment because Vincenzo Nibali doesn't just want to win this race overall, he wants to win this stage.
Yes, and it didn't look like it was a big attack, but we're in a section where it's really steep here, and the teammates were really surprised at what was happening, because we could see Tangen Candid that he was looking for a moment, and then he takes it up with Nibali in his wheel there, and it's going to be interesting to see, will anybody be capable of closing them down, or will they go on all the way to the finish?
Peter Weening is pushing towards the top inside 3 kilometres now for himself, but he's still hasn't quite caught Eros Kopecky. Very little between them. Keselowski is caught by Vincenzo Nibali, and the rest, most of the rest of the general classification riders have closed down that attack of Vincenzo Nibali.
And the two, one AGR rather there, yeah. Betancourt is there, very much to the fore here in the wheel of Micah, of course, the young classification leader. So
forget most of them. It's the two Colombians, Carlos Betancourt and Rigoberto Urán, that have managed to close them down. Riders are coming over in ones or twos, but there's time enough for Vincenzo Nibali to go for it again. 12 seconds between Peter Weening and Eris Kopecky. Looked a bit less than that last time we saw. Pozzovivo is struggling to get back on terms. So is
Scarponi.
Scarponi and Niemiec are struggling too.
Cadel Evans.
Yes, Cadel Evans is being dropped. Can he find a way back into this? As Brambilla is shut down and dropped. Nibali goes again. Carlos Betancourt looks to cover it. And Weening has been caught. So now just Eris Kopecky out front. And Cadel Evans, can he respond to this? with 2.5 kilometres to go. It's looking ominous for the Australian. It's looking ominous too for Iris Kopecky out front.
Yes, I think it's game over. He's seemed to be suffering on this real difficult section as Vincenzo Nibali just keeps on pushing on, putting in these little accelerations, and we can see Rigoberto Urán has moved up here also, and he seems to be riding away from at the moment.
Speaking of riding away, here goes Vincenzo Nibali again. As he catches Iris Kopecky, he moves clear of the rest of the group. The two Colombians aren't able to respond. Rigoberto Urán goes ahead of Carlos Betancourt, but they're looking at the race leader, Vincenzo Nibali, riding away into the distance. There's still a long way to go in this stage. Kopecky fights on, but he'll soon be caught by Rigoberto Urán and Carlos Betancourt. Urán of the Sky Pro cycling team. Betancourt in the brown, white and blue colours of AG2R. Pelozzotti with Pozzovivo for company. Scarponi's there as well for Lampre Merida. That's a long way to the finish for Vincenzo Nibali, but he's decided to strike out for a glorious stage victory in the Giro d'Italia. Kopecky is a beaten docket. So too is Wheeling, but he continues to push on. Further back, Pelozzotti and Pozzovivo.
And we can see all are suffering big time here, and of course this is a real difficult section. Around the 2 kilometre to go, it kicks up to 18%, so you know, they're on that section at the moment. We can see Nibali, you know, just grinding away at it. We can see Betancourt and Urán also just struggling. It looks like, you know, they're not going anywhere, but it's the gradient here. It's so steep, and everybody is just grovelling to get up this one.
Yeah, around about 18% at this point. So this is the toughest part of the mountain. Then it levels off to still pretty excruciating 13-12%. Only really eases up in the last 100 metres. So Vincenzo Nibali has decided to go for it in a big way. He's got the advantage, and look at this. The slow motion really gives you an indication of how cold it is. Out of the saddle once more as he pushes to press home his advantage. And we saw Rigoberto Urán look across at Carlos Betancourt as if to say, well, what have you got? Betancourt gave him a turn, but to what odds, to what value? There's very little aerodynamic advantage to be had from sitting on the wheel in these sort of gradients. Scarponi is suffering. But the two Colombian riders desperate to try and close down the advantage of Vincenzo Nibali. Carlos Betancourt and Rigoberto Urán. Conditions a lot different to where they would have grown up. Meanwhile, Cadel Evans looks like he's getting himself back into contention. This is a fantastic effort from Cadel Evans, at least to try and protect his position in second position on general classification. Betancourt ditches his bottle. Any little bit of psychological or actual advantage that can be gained from that. Well, the mind is the greatest muscle that they have in their armory at this point. Scarponi looks like he's getting back up there. Up front, Vincenzo Nibali. His thoughts only about the group, or about the hill in front, and just as I say it, he looks over his shoulder to see what sort of an advantage he's got on that hairpin. He's got 1.6 kilometres to go, and they're at 1,700 metres. And remember, this hill finishes at just a smidge over 2,300. So he's got another 600 metres of climbing in the next 1,500 metres of cycling. It's steep.
very steep, and we can see there that he is just working away at it, and although pulling out the advantage to the two chasers there, Betancourt and Rigoberto Urán, and we can see Cadel Evans, we can see the supporters there getting a bit over anxious with Nibali, and he just pushing them off a bit, but at least they're not pushing them, which is the good thing. Sometimes they want to push you, and that's what you do not need, because you can get a fine for that. But Cadel Evans doing a great job here. I suppose the interesting thing is, for the young jersey classification, we have seen that the leader there has slipped off quite a bit, and he's not up there. Mike he's disappeared, and Betancourt, of course, want to push on here, as we can see the two AGR men. Is it no, just one?
No, just one. Is that
Mike is?
Yeah, it's Rafa Mike, I think,
Mike
just
is
behind
still here.
him.
Yes, he's coming back also. That Pelazzotti?
Yeah, Pelazzotti was in there for Androni Giocattoli. Meanwhile, these two Colombians have still got a decent advantage, and they've both got things to race for. Rigoberto Urán racing for second place ahead of Cadel Evans, who's chasing behind in the distance in the red and black colours of BMC. Up front, Vincenzo Nibali piles it on. 1,300 metres to go, and just a little moment there on the inside. Let's hope the spectators can stay away from Vincenzo Nibali. This climb was rendered meaningless back in 1967 because of all the pushes, and it's just terrible when you see the spectators feeling that they have to put a hand on the riders. As Cadel Evans pushes on, Pozzovivo of AG2R closes down, but Betancourt, the man on the left here for AG2R, riding towards the white jersey of the leader of the Young Riders classification. His companion Rigoberto Urán riding towards second place. He needs to find 10 seconds to Cadel Evans to move into second position. So there's battles throughout the mountain. This the battle. And here goes Urán. Duarte had managed to drag himself up. So three Colombians chasing Vincenzo Nibali. Three Colombians pushing on, but they can do nothing about Vincenzo Nibali up in front. Apparently not anyway. Still a kilometre left to ride though. That's a long way in these conditions. Duarte looks as if he's struggling. Betancourt not enjoying the gradient. Rigoberto Urán is a young man, but he looks he'll age on this hill today. Inside the final kilometre for the race leader, the overall race leader, the stage leader, Vincenzo Nibali. Cadel Evans grinds away on that gear, desperate to try and get back in contention with these riders, because the man on the front here, Rigoberto Urán, is threatening to take over his second position. Three Colombians. Colombia famous for their mountain goats. They're wonderful climbers over the years, and they have a rich crop of talented riders, but was that 50 seconds I heard in my ear? The gap between the man up front and the left-hand side of your screen, Vincenzo Nibali, and the three men chasing him, as Cadel Evans pushing hard, and Damiano Caruso's on a good day for Cannondale. 32 seconds now is the official gap, so misheard that one. But still, it's a handy advantage. Half a minute to the good for Vincenzo Nibali. He's taken 4 staged victories. And 1 minute and 5, we understand, between Nibali and the Scarponi group, including Cadel Evans. So that would suggest round about half a minute advantage for Rigoberto Urán over Cadel Evans. So no doubt about it, Cadel Evans is going to slip into third position. And now Evans is struggling to stay with Scarponi, Niemiec, Pelazzotti. Conditions absolutely abysmal on the Tre Cime di Lavaredo.
Yes, just horrible conditions, and everybody suffering because of the conditions they've been in for the final 25 kilometres, 30 kilometres. The cold has got into a lot of riders, and we can see, they're not going as they normally would on a climb like this, but everybody is in the same situation. The cold is really, hitting everybody, but Nibali, you know, he's proven the strongest here again, just riding away from everybody. And we did forecast that a bit with the advantage he has in the general classification, the way he's been riding the last number of days. Not surprising that he's going for this stage victory. You know, this is a very important one as race leader to win this you know, big mountain stage. Although some of the mountains being taken out, will still be looked at as, you know, one of the big stages of this Giro.
Yeah, he really wanted it. Inside the last 400 metres now for Vincenzo Nibali, and thankfully we've had pictures all the way up to the top of the hill. He's inside the final part with the stationary cameras, and horrific conditions, but wonderful to see so many spectators on the Lavaredo cheering on these stars of cycling, who are delighted to be able to deliver such an entertaining race and a wonderful stage. And for Vincenzo Nibali, I think it's really important for him that he's been able to demonstrate in a mountain top finish that he is the man of the race.
Yes, and unfortunately, you know, yesterday's stage not going on for him. He would have had an opportunity yesterday and again today if it had been a big mountain stage, but you know, to do it in the circumstances and when you're the race leader, it's always important. And the rider himself, you want to prove that they're the best one and win a time trial first of all, which he has done, but win a big mountain top finish, a big stage, it's also of major importance.
Vincenzo Nibali now almost within sight of the finish line at the top of the final climb of the Giro d'Italia of 2013. It's the Cima Coppi, the highest point that this year's race reaches, and the Colombian triumvirate, the combined ranks of one of the great climbing nations, not able to do anything about the race leader. The home favourite Vincenzo Nibali grinds on towards glory. Meanwhile, Cadel Evans, well, just desperately trying to limit his losses. It's been a great race for Cadel Evans, but not equal to the task, unfortunately, today. But Vincenzo Nibali looks behind. He can barely see more than 10 or 15 yards, but he knows that he's taken the victory as Vincenzo Nibali takes stage 20 of the Giro d'Italia at the top, the summit of Trecime de Lavaredo. And now 3 Colombians fight it out for second position. Which one of them is going to get it? Will it be Duarte that comes across the line? It's almost impossible to tell, ahead of Rigoberto Urán. So great result for the Colombian team, but not the stage victory they would have liked. And Carlos Betancourt misses out on the bonus seconds, but still very significant advantage between himself and Rafael Maica. So he will move back into the young riders classification jersey. Superb performance, bearing in mind he had 2 stoppages on the final hill. And as the riders come over in 1s and 2s, Franco Pelazzotti, Domenico Pozzovivo, the diminutive figure of the small AG Tour climber, Damiano Caruso, you can barely look behind.
Santangelo also coming over there, and we can see here Maica coming over, suffering majorly here, and going to lose his white jersey classification certainly to Betancourt.
It's all up for him as the 2 Lampre Merida riders, Michele Scarponi, and just preceded by Rafael Niemic, Przemysław Niemic I should say. And now we have Cadel Evans winching himself to the top of this relentless climb and finishing off what's been a tough day for him. And he will lose second place on general classification to Rigoberto Urán, but should still stay on the podium, I do believe. Riders coming up in dribs and drabs, and this, the worst pain and suffering of the Giro, is completed. And they'll be coming up in 1s and 2s for a long time to come. A savage climb to finish, even in dry conditions, and this cold weather will have made it just that bit more arduous. And well, the riders can't get to the safety and comfort of their cars and buses quick enough. Now that was the moment when Vincenzo Nibali having to push the spectators out of the way, and Twitter's gone a bit mad actually with complaints about the spectators, and I don't...
Well, what is new? We've seen it always in the big tours where the spectators, they're there for a long time, and they get over anxious as their big heroes come up, and we could see it there once again with Nibali. A lot of changes, of course, in general classification. Uran will definitely move ahead of Cadel Evans. The young jersey classification, Betancourt takes that over, and Mark Cavendish will lose his red jersey to Nibali, because I make it that Nibali will go to 128, where Cavendish, he had 113 starting out this morning.
Moved up to 117.
So Nibali will take that red jersey classification, the points classification.
Wow. Well, I guess he'll get to wear it at least, because Nibali will be wearing the pink jersey, but it does mean that Mark Cavendish has to deliver in the final stage in Brescia. So there's confirmation of the stage results. Vincenzo Nibali takes that road stage victory that he wants. Back-to-back stage wins for the race leader, ahead of Duarte of the Colombian team. On any other day, it would have been a glorious success for Colombia. Rigoberto Urán and Carlos Betancourt make it 3 Colombians in the top 4. What about that performance from Fabio Aru of the Astana team in 5th? Pelazzotti, his first big result of the race, in 6th position. Pozzovivo Caruso comes up with a good result for Cannondale. Adapuma hung on for 2 Colombians from the Colombian team, and 4 Colombians in total in the top 9. Rafael Maica 10th, but missing out, or at least losing his young riders classification jersey. Still riders coming up. So Vincenzo Nibali now in the lead of the points competition, but narrow advantage. Well, certainly it's a closable one for him. But for Vincenzo Nibali, less concerned about adding points to his total. All he cared about was winning that stage, confirming his status as the top rider of the race, and he'll be absolutely thrilled that the organisers were at least able to deliver a proper mountain stage for the penultimate stage of the Giro, that he could demonstrate his ability, demonstrate that he is the strongest man in the race, and that he is the new Campionissimo of Italian cycling. Is it too early to give him that title? He's got one more stage to do. It should be straightforward for him as long as he can stay safe on the road to Brescia tomorrow. He will be confirmed as the champion of the Giro d'Italia of 2013. He'll add that to his victory in the Vuelta a España of 2010. Another Vuelta on offer for him later in the season. Perhaps he'll be adding to his Grand Tour collection in Spain in what one would presume would be substantially better weather conditions. And for Duarte, it was a great result. What about the Colombian riders? I mean, just the sight of Colombians coming across the line with their helmets caked in snow.
Yes, and they are the specialists in this style of finish. Real difficult to percentage, real steep gradient, and not surprising to see many of them up there. The weather conditions, of course, they would not like that. They would like the warmer conditions, and that's where they would perform. But what conditions we've had today there in that final. When you go back, the first time they came here in 1967, it was the same situation. It was also held in the snow, so it's not the first time that they have finished the Giro here in real foul conditions.
Riders slugging their way up the mountain. No great result for Euskaltel after all their early efforts. Some disappointment for Sanchez and co. One comment on Twitter from Fabian Cancellara: we're watching the Giro d'Italia. This is definitely not healthy and has nothing to do with sport. Hashtag wrong decision. Overall standings confirmed, with Vincenzo Nibali now with a 4 minutes and 43 second advantage over Rigoberto Urán. Cadel Evans stays on the podium but slips from 2nd to 3rd. Scarponi 4th, 6:48 back, didn't when he hangs on to his position. Carlos Betancourt moves up to 5th, and if he hadn't had that bike change and that wheel change, might have been so much better. Niemic, what a wonderful performance for him as Betancourt splits the two Lampre riders. Mike now 7th, but out of the white jersey.